here with Usama Fayyad, the founder of Open Insights, co-founder and CTO of OODA Health, and co-founder of IADSS, which stands for Initiative for Analytics and Data Science Standards. Today, we're going to talk about, are you licensed to analyze? We're going to talk about standards around data science and analytics roles. So thank you for joining, and Usama, please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, I guess I've been dealing with data mining and data science for a lot of years. Started out with a PhD in AI machine learning, then 7 years at NASA Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, then Microsoft for 5 years. Then I did my first 2 startups in the Seattle area, the second of which got acquired by Yahoo in 2004, where I became the world's first chief data officer. The title started out as a joke at the time.
Did it?
Yes, and now it became a serious thing, I guess. Then I did a few more startups, did a stint running a accelerator and technology investment fund in the Middle East out of Jordan. Moved to Barclays in London for 3 years, came back to Open Insights in 2016, and have been also very involved in OODA Health, which is a healthcare technology startup.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this live session. And so we are in Boston today. We are at the Open Data Science Conference, ODSC East. And you had a talk this morning. Can you share with your audience what you talked about, basically some key points? Yeah,
the keynote was really focused on some of the research, on sharing some of the research results we found out through the IADSS, the Initiative for Analytics and Data Science Standards that I co-founded with Hamid Hamouchou, who's also here. I started out really to motivate everyone about this. I started out with a picture of Captain Sully, and I said, you know, would you rather be flying with this guy, or, and I had some images of some really bad pilots.
Wait, who's a bad pilot?
Well, you'll have to look at the slides that we shared. And then basically said the same thing in the medical profession. You know, would you rather have a surgeon with a good reputation, or, and I had stories about kind of surgery gone wrong and some of the bad practices. And then I asked the fundamental question, which is, how bad do you think things would get if you had the wrong people who claim to understand data science, kind of do the analysis, often missing out huge value that could be available in the data for the organization, or even worse, leading the organization in the wrong direction because they reached the wrong conclusions by doing the wrong analyses. And I think that's way underappreciated in the field. So the biggest economic problem we hope to address, both as a service to the field, but also as a service to companies working and organizations working in the field, is imagine now a space where you have huge shortages of talent. And there's some amazing studies that talk about the difference between the number of job openings in data science and the number of available data scientists that could fulfill those jobs. And we talked about McKinsey predicting in 2011 that by 2018 there'll be 110,000 job openings that cannot be fulfilled.
By when?
By 2018.
By 2018.
And what's amazing is LinkedIn runs this independent study, or we think it's independent of that, saying how many jobs in data science are not fulfilled, and lo and behold, they come to very close to 115,000.
Okay.
So that's the shortage, right?
Yeah.
IBM is predicting by 2020 there'll be 2.2 million data science and analytics jobs out there, with similar kind of gaps in supply demand. So here's the question. You have all these gaps, you're trying to hire, you're an organization, and you've got all these candidates, most of whom are not qualified, who are actually applying and submitting their resume and say, hey, I'm a data scientist, hire me. What do you do as an organization? Most organizations don't even, their HR departments don't understand data science, their managers don't understand it, so they actually end up spending a lot of time interviewing. And we had quotes from a lot of the people that who did the survey.
Yeah.
One of them basically said, look, I had a 60-to-1 ratio between interviewing or looking at 60 people before I actually was able to hire one. And
that's
I was
pretty
lucky
good,
to
no?
hire one. No, I would say that's good.
That's good odds.
This person was actually complaining that it was too high. But imagine this now, 60 interviews.
Yeah, that takes a
Each
lot of time.
interview, and many of them say basically take a whole day with a lot of people from the organization.
Yeah.
We did some basic math, and we came across a number we're trying to now verify it and publish it officially. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent only on wasted interviews. Like imagine that's the wasted interview space.
The madness.
Yep.
How do we move away from that?
Well, how do we move away from that? So you asked me what we talked about. So
Yes.
the talk started out with examples of how the role is so varied that within the same company, and we used Facebook as a company, 3 different people who call themselves data scientists, you look at their LinkedIn profiles, completely different backgrounds, completely different education, completely different emphasis, right? Then, of course, we compared jobs in data science and analytics across different companies, and there the variance is even much larger.
Right.
Then we looked at both the supply and the demand. So the people, how they talk about themselves when they claim they are data scientists. And again, you see a huge variance, which is very confusing to employers. And then we looked at the supply side, which is who's training these guys, so the universities. And we actually compared several programs, both undergraduate and graduate, the curricula.
Yeah.
And they also almost have nothing in common, right? So the confusion is just growing bigger and deeper. And we think the fix, and this is our mission really, is to basically define these roles and have even sub-roles. So if everybody likes to call themselves data scientists, great, we'll have data scientists type A, type B, type C, type D. Because often an organization is trying to hire a data scientist for digging through the data and dealing with big data systems.
The cleaning.
Another one wants to hire somebody who's an interface to the business. A third one wants to have really and what I would call an algorithms jockey who really knows the machine learning algorithms and how to use them, etc. So there's a huge variance, and we need to address that variance.
Okay, so I'm also part of the advisory board of IADSS, and maybe we can spend some time talking about that. So what can we expect to hear from IADSS over the next few months? What are some long-term goals? And maybe let's just start with why did you decide to co-found this?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for serving on our advisory board, and we're proud to have you. Second of all, we started it really, personally out of frustration, and I think my co-founder Hamid, out of kind of spending many years working in analytics and realizing, oh my God, there's people who are doing analytics who shouldn't be doing analytics. There's people who don't understand it. There's people who are suffering. They can't find what they need. They can't express what they need. So for us, the vision is a ubiquity of these standards that we hope to develop with the community, where we define, by standards I mean, what is a role? How do you define a role? How do you define the requirements to basically qualify for that role? What are the qualifications? And how do you make that ubiquitous with everybody, so reachable, acceptable to everyone, where everybody can start looking at it and speak a new language, where they're really distinguishing and avoiding a lot of the inefficiencies. That's number one. Number two is setting the standards for how do you qualify for that role. So what kind of assessments do you administer to make sure that you know these skills? And just saying that somebody should know machine learning isn't enough. Well, depending on the job, what parts of machine learning should you test on? And which aspects? And what kinds of algorithms, etc., as an example. Same with analytics, same with visualization, same with a lot of these roles. So defining those 3 areas and making that ubiquitous where it's easily accessible, easily applied. By the way, we think it's totally doable. It just needs enough energy around it and enough people who are interested in serving the field to sort of say, well, this makes sense, we should adopt it. And people will adopt it because the need is there, both for educators, for employers, and for candidates.
Yeah, I think I'm going to ask the LinkedIn audience, so whoever has joined, can you just tell us, do you think there's a need for standards around data science and analytics roles? And I'll just see what the comments come by. But let's just quickly talk about why. So you said you started this out of frustration. So why exactly do we need standards? Why can't we just all be data scientists and be happy?
Well, because there's many other jobs that need to be fulfilled. We don't need to all be data scientists. It is a great job. It is a great career. But also, to be a data scientist, much like, you know, being a pilot or being a surgeon or a doctor, you really need to know what you're doing. And we, or society, needs to know that they can trust that you know what you're doing, so that you're allowed to kind of do good or do damage in a limited way, as opposed to kind of an open field where anybody can do anything, and who knows what's good, what's bad, what's a good hire, what's a bad hire, how much should I pay. All that stuff is very hard to compare if you don't have these standards. So these standards are absolutely essential to make it a more rational process, to guide the educators on what to teach, for what role, and to guide the employers on what to look for each role.
Got it. So I know you've been doing a lot of research and surveys and interviews. Can you give us a sense of how many surveys or interviews have you completed so far?
Yeah, so far we've had over 700 survey participants, and I would encourage everybody tuning in to go to IADSS.org and take the survey. That's IADSS.org, and take the survey, because that helps us and helps you. It'll also, and there's 2 versions of the survey, etc. We've had about 700 people from hundreds of companies. One of the surprises to me was the majority of these companies were large companies. I really thought a lot of startups, a lot of freelancers would be taking the survey. But no, what we're finding is a lot of managers, a lot of people in kind of well-defined roles in big companies are interested in taking it because they're curious, and they actually face this problem. Is their HR department doesn't know how to hire, or they're not getting support, or recruiters are trying to charge them a lot of money, or candidates are demanding too much.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me on this LinkedIn live stream all the way from Boston at the ODSC conference. I think one thing I'll say is, if you want to follow on with what IADS is doing, you should join the LinkedIn group. Just look for IADS, you'll find it. And also go to IADSS.org and go ahead and take that survey. So thank you again.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for having me here.
All right. Bye, everyone.